It's the Craggy Rugby Podcast. We're in TG Carr Studios, where Connacht, we've been watching the Connacht match in Cardiff, which was, well, that's all I can say about that match. Connacht won, William. Connacht won.
Yeah, they did. They got the 4 points that they desperately needed. Showed a bit of character, particularly when the bench cleared to get the job done. Played in dreadful conditions, maybe not as obvious in here when we were watching it on television. It did look very nasty. A lot of rain falling all the time. Huge day for Cardiff Rugby. I mean, they were there to commemorate the life of Barry John, who is probably their greatest ever player. They had a full house of 12,000, which is fantastic to see. So Gareth Edwards was there. He had a jersey for Barry John, a Cardiff jersey with his name on the back, and he had a pair of his boots in a case. Fabulous player. The old story was told that Gareth Edwards asked to do a bit of training. You got to remember the training back in the day was very haphazard. And fundamentally, Gareth Edwards arrived early and he was wondering where Barry John had got to. And Barry John had been out the night before. He was a student. And he said he had a monstrous hangover. And he said, Gareth's saying, do this and do that. And in the end, Barry John said, look, you throw it, I'll catch it. And that was really how it worked. And it was a big day. They gave away a lot of tickets to clubs. They gave away a lot of tickets to schools. And everybody, despite the weather, turned up. The place was, I've never seen the place is full in this era. And Pete Wilkins, who's been there plenty of times, said it was the best atmosphere he's ever heard there. And that's really what Welsh rugby needs, because we know the problems. And to commemorate a fantastic rugby player like that. And unfortunately, the game didn't get to the level of the sort of game.
Not even close.
No, I mean, I've got to be honest, somebody like Barry John, who often spoke about modern rugby, that it confused him. Well, I'll tell you, 80 minutes of that would have left him baffled.
It certainly would. We've got Lindy MacKenzie here as well. Lindy, you were watching that game, but just before, do you have any memories of Barry John? Because it was the Kiwis who called him the king.
Not overly, but just in terms of Welsh players, yes, his name is very familiar to us, as many players are, from Europe. So we always just knew that he was a brilliant player, and I think it's a bit like some of the New Zealand players we used to have, and when we were kids and running around the place, would always, try to emulate them. And Barry John would have been one of those players that the lads and and playing in the streets would definitely try to emulate.
And that's, you can't get any higher praise than that. Really, you really can't. So on to actually, before we get your thoughts on the game, let's hear what Pete Wilkins and Caolin Blade had to say about the game and the atmosphere, as William just alluded to.
A game of two halves, Pete, I suppose, and the job is done, but it was a rather stuttering performance at times.
Yeah, look, I think it was that type of game, and it never really got going. I think that's quite often the nature of Cardiff and Connacht contests. I think obviously the weather conditions, the amount of rain we had there leading up to kick-off, and particularly in that first half, I thought was made it difficult for both teams. I was delighted to win it. I think for me, in 7 years, I've never won here as a Connacht coach. Before that, I think I won once with Edinburgh. So it's a tough place to come and play. And I think with the spirit shown by the Cardiff side, I think the occasion, in terms of everything that was going on around it, I think the red card probably added even more fire to their belly. And then the conditions. It was an incredibly tough game. So to come out on the right side of it, I was delighted. Now, there's lots of bits of our performance in there that I was frustrated with, and I think we weren't at our best. But that said, to come away with that result, I'm not sure we would have done in previous seasons.
Yeah, that's a fair point. It was some of the issue maybe with decision making, particularly in the first half, that Connacht were sort of hanging on a bit there at times. That you had to do a couple of big defensive stands, and you couldn't seem to get yourselves out of your own 22 because you just couldn't get the ball cleared.
Yeah, I think you get that feeling of hanging on often when you are spending that much time in your own half, and certainly in terms of us getting out of there, we had some errors in terms of the set piece that we had around about that sort of 40-metre to 50-metre mark. We weren't getting on the right end of some of the 50-50s on the back of our kicking game when we're coming out from a little bit deeper as well. So, we talked at half time about using less rucks to get out of our own half. I think, Cardiff are doing a great job of targeting our breakdown and getting some success from it. So take a bit of pressure away and a bit of opportunity away in our half of the field. We started getting on the right end of some of those 50-50s on the kick chase and some of the contestable kicking. And that gave us a platform to really try and force some errors out of Cardiff. So I think that really helped us. And, on the back of that, we're able to apply some more pressure.
When you analyse a game like this, maybe Monday or Tuesday or whenever, maybe you'll start tomorrow doing it. But I suppose you have to just park it and move on and say, right, we got the 4 points, which you really needed. But there's specific work-ons there probably across the board, maybe?
Yeah, I think I think it'll take a lot of analysis, and as I said, I think the reason for that is almost every element of our game, from our kicking game to our set piece to our attack to our defence, had some really positive moments, particularly in the second half. But there was some real quality considering the conditions we were playing in and the pressure that Cardiff were putting us under. But there was also some really poor moments where we needed to be better and where we didn't deliver in each of those game areas. So I think for us, one of the first things we talked about in the change room was the intensity of our defence. 5 metres out, 10 metres out from our own line. You compare what we were like in the first half to how we came out at the start of the second half. There was a huge difference in that. And I think it's important for us to really dig into that and understand the reasons for that and make sure that when we go out there against Scarlets in 2 weeks' time that we don't take a while to warm into the game. So the intent was there, but I just think some of the quality at the end of it probably wasn't at times. So we'll have a really close look at it, and it's important we use these next 2 weeks to get better, because if you look at that Munster Scarlets game last night, probably neither team played particularly well moving down the field, but what Munster did a great job was putting Scarlets away once they got into the attacking 22. So that's something that we've got to be really aware of, not just for the Scarlets game, but for the whole second half of the season.
Caolin, Pete's alluded there to the fact that maybe Connacht were a bit slow out of the blocks, and the first half was a scrapping, hanging on effort. But watching it on television as we were, it did look that the substitutes, the bench, made a huge difference when they came on. They seemed to inject a bit of momentum at just the right time.
100%. Look, I think in the first half we lost the breakdown and we lost the 50-50s, and then when you have lads coming off the bench that are winning 50-50s and winning breakdown and running amazing lines, I thought the forwards, especially the front five that come on, were outstanding. Give us a huge lift. You alluded to it earlier that it was a game of two halves. I think the first half, as you said, when they went to 13 men, it felt like we were still under pressure. And it's something that we need to work on. We need to look back on. But yeah, look, credit to the lads. As Pete said, we haven't won here in so long. So I think it was 7 years ago I was playing that we won. So we'll take the win. But yeah, there's going to be huge learnings from it.
Would one of those learnings maybe be at times, especially with the extra man or the two extra men, the attack looked very narrow? I know the conditions were difficult, but it sort of set it up for Cardiff to just hit people and make tackles. It was maybe needed to be a little bit more adventure, maybe.
I don't know. I think the conditions here were terrible. It was very like when we played Munster at home. I think it's easy to get trapped into doing that. If you do that and you execute, all well and good. But I think it was all about putting pressure on them and building pressure, and finally getting scores, and that's what we did. So look, we have to be happy with that.
Pete, finally from me, was there a decision made to change the kicking a little bit in the second half? That I know the chase improved, but they seemed to be trying to move the Cardiff players around a bit. The first half, it was a bit too easy for them.
But I think there's probably just a bit more variation. I think in terms of kicking off 9 and kicking off 10 in that second half, sort of early on. A lot came through JJ, and I just think getting Blady putting boot to ball a little bit more helped us. I think it added some variety to it, but it also gave us a chance to contest those high balls in difficult conditions. And when Michael McDonald came on for that last 10 minutes, I thought the couple of box kicks he had were real quality as well. So, for us over the years, we've probably not had a pressure game that we can go to, particularly in wet conditions or if we're trying to see out a tight game. And I think, for us to be able to turn the screw like that, it wasn't perfect, but I think for us to show another side to ourselves when we needed it is another really good sign of this group's development, and the fact that lads can get excited about that and bring the intensity on the back end of it is really pleasing. It's not just about ambition and throwing the ball around. So, if we can maintain that balance when we need it, I think it puts us in a strong position moving forwards.
Well, we have another little break coming now in this slightly strange layout to the season, but we look forward to the Scarlets game in Galway in 2 weeks, and hopefully we get a big crowd up there. I'm going to hand you over now. Thanks for your time, lads. I'm going to hand you over to Linley MacKenzie, who's sitting beside me.
Thanks, William. Cheers.
Hey guys.
Hi,
Congratulations. It was hard work, wasn't it? It was hard work for us sitting here as well. Listen, I've got this feeling every time you go to Cardiff, I don't know if it's a mental block or whatever it is about Cardiff, but the games are always really hard fought. And I mean, your record is not particularly good as well in Arms Park. What do you account for this particular win?
I think, although we didn't play, I don't think we played particularly well in that first half, consistently enough. But I think the fight of the lads to stay in the contest and get to half time at 6-7 down, I think was really significant. We'd seen in the build-up that Cardiff, I think, scored almost 2/3 of their points this season in the first half of games. So we know how dangerous they are in the first halves. And we had real faith in our fitness, and we had real faith in our bench. And we felt if we were there or thereabouts at half time, that would be a platform for us to try and go on and win the game. Now, at the same time, that doesn't excuse the opportunities that we missed or the opportunities that we gave Cardiff in the first half. But going in at half time with the ledger almost even, I think was incredibly important for us mentally, but also to give us a platform.
What did you say at half time?
We talked about pretty bluntly about the things we hadn't done well, that allowed Cardiff to pressurise us, and I think they played really well, to be fair, and particularly in that first half. Yeah. So it's acknowledging that, but acknowledging the things that we needed to do better. We're pretty honest about that, but also just remind the lads exactly what I just said, that we felt if we were in the hunt at half time, then we'd be able to hopefully accelerate from there. Now the conditions mean accelerating the game in a big way is not possible. I did think our intensity lifted, and I thought probably some of the outcomes we got on the back of that were a bit more favourable. So we talked about that. We talked about the importance of positive body language, because it was a night where there's always going to be errors from both teams. You've got a really passionate home crowd on a massive occasion for this club, which we had so much respect for. But it's the best atmosphere I've ever experienced here at the Arms Park. It was tremendous, and I think in those situations you can't let your heads drop, and you can't let your frustration show as much as it might be there, because you've got to make each other lift again and go again and look for the next opportunity. And we just talked about, I suppose, that in terms of body language and mindset, and how that could assist in what we're trying to do second half.
Do you think this victory shows a real kind of growing maturity in this side, given the fact that it has been so difficult to eke out wins in Cardiff?
Yeah, I'd like to think so, and so just having that different style of game and being able to win in different ways, I think, is really important. But I've got to give Cardiff credit, as we said in the build up to the game. Connacht and Cardiff are often fighting out for similar spots on the ledger. They're a really difficult team to play against, in the sense that they want to play the game with a bit of adventure as well, but they have a really effective kicking game and a really aggressive defence. So those are the sort of games that everyone understands when you don't win them. But I think if you're really serious about being at the top end of the table, you do come to difficult places and win those sorts of games. So I think for us to do that is probably a sign of the growth of the group.
Okay, good stuff from the lads as always. And I think, Linley, we certainly, because we're still in the west of Ireland and the west of Ireland, we really didn't get a feel for what the atmosphere was like there, and it must have been incredible, and must have had a big impact on that Cardiff team, because they came out and played quite a lot of decent enough rugby, but Connacht gave them an awful lot of opportunity.
Look, having been to the Arms Park on many occasions and watched Connacht lose a match on many occasions there, I think it was probably easy to imagine what the crowd was like, particularly on this particular day, who they were honouring, and obviously the fact that they had this day specially marked out. I mean, we can't see the weather particularly. I mean, it didn't look that bad from where we were sitting. But, you know, Cardiff has never been a happy hunting ground, you know, for Connacht.
No.
And I think, despite the fact that they did not play to the best of their abilities, particularly in the first half, I think to eke out that victory was absolutely huge for Connacht, you know, both in terms of where they stand on the table and also in terms of their mental prowess, so to speak. The fact that they have, it's another sort of one of those monkeys on their back. I'm not sure of the stats, but we know that in how many times have they won there? I think I wrote
that's only their fourth
ever win. Yeah. And they've always usually been pretty close affairs.
Yes.
But there's always been some, I think, psychological block when it comes to Cardiff. And they're never really good games. They're never open running games. They're always kind of like,
which is surprising considering they're two of the most open running teams that you can get, and yet when they come up against each other, they seem to nullify each other.
Absolutely. And I think it's probably one of those cases that they're usually quite close to each other on the table, and I think that's what actually makes for those games. I think it's the fear of losing more than winning.
Yes. Yeah. It's something, William, that, you know, you have a situation where some of the decision making seemed to be completely off the charts, because for 10 minutes of that game, Cardiff only had 13 players, because we had the red card, which is a straightforward red card. There's not much to discuss, to be honest. You know, head-on-head clash, and it was dangerous, and poor Shane Bolton got, you know, the worst of it. But when they were down to 13 players, Connacht never really looked like scoring.
No, I asked Caolin Blade, as you've heard in the press conference there, about the fact that they didn't spread it wide, and he gave a very obvious answer and fair play about the conditions. But sometimes you have to back yourself a little bit and try to move the ball around. But they achieved the win in the end. But you know, they'll have to play better in other circumstances, and I think they will pick that game apart very heavily. It's a dreadful place to go to. I don't know why Connacht struggle there so much.
But most teams have this year. You know, if you look at it, the games that they've lost, anyone that's gone to Cardiff has only barely beaten them. And Cardiff have beaten the Stormers. Yeah,
they have. No, it's. I think you have to take your hat off to them. Look, Welsh. We've discussed it many times. Welsh rugby is in a bit of a hole at the moment.
Yeah.
So you either sit and moan or you get on with it. Cardiff and the Ospreys seem to have made the decision to get on with it.
Yeah.
There's always been a bit of niggle in Wales against Cardiff, because they were always seen as the big city team, the capital city team, and they used to run around back in the day scooping up players.
Yes.
From everywhere. And, you know, players got jobs for them, or if there was a good player who was a surgeon or a solicitor or an accountant, suddenly, amazingly, they would get somebody would find a position for them in Cardiff. But they've actually come out and tried to fight where they are. Matt Scarrett was very honest when we spoke to him during the week, and I think that's the only hope they have is to try to do that.
Yeah.
But their limitations were shown tonight, and Connacht didn't expose them. But when they did eventually figure out a few things and the bench got on, they got it done. But it wasn't pretty. It was a difficult game. They will analyse it. They will look at it, and then they'll move on from it. Some players I thought did particularly well. I thought Niall Murray had a very good game.
Yes.
Listen to what John Muldoon had to say when we spoke to him during the week. He basically said, everybody's been asking, where's Niall Murray? His answer was very upfront. He said, essentially, his skills were very much in stealing lineouts, but there wasn't enough around the park and other things, and they sent him away to work on it. And that's what you get from players who really want to succeed. They go away and they work on it. And he got the chance against Bristol, and he seized it. And I thought tonight he looked better around the park. He worked hard, and he did get stuck into their line-out. Andrew Smith had another decent game. I think all of the bench players added something.
Definitely.
No, maybe they were facing a Cardiff side that were getting a bit tired with only 14 players, and
Plus their bench was incredibly callow.
it was very callow.
But that's not the point. They still came out and showed the attitude that was required to take Connacht, move it on, and score, because they went behind. They were struggling. They were going to lose.
I think Caolin accepted that they were hanging on a bit in the first
Yeah.
half, and they were. There was a couple of big goal line stands, and even at the start of the second half, there was 3 goal line stands. Well, there was 2, and then they got the try. That was Tamani who'd had the yellow card, and he came on and scores immediately.
Yeah.
Because you keep thinking, well, you've stopped 2, you're not going to stop 3. You can't keep stopping. And again, that was down to poor kicking, decision making, getting messed up playing rugby in your own half. But they figured it out. They got it done, and once they've looked at it and accepted it, they'll move on to the Scarlets in 2 weeks.
And had they held on, Linley, had they held on to that pass, remember they made a couple of breaks where Seamus Hurley-Langton made a break, passed it to Cian Prendergast, gave it back to Hurley-Langton. There was 3 guys lining up for the pass, and the ball went to ground. There was nobody in front of him. If he got that pass away, could have even denied Cardiff a losing bonus point.
Absolutely, but I think what we have to look at is and William has said it, that the impact that the subs made.
Yes.
And yeah, well, it probably was, and as you said, we couldn't see really the conditions where we're sitting. So it probably was extremely tiring for the lads who remained on the pitch. So it probably needed that freshness. But I have to say, when you talk about Seamus Hurley-Langton, I have to follow up with another New Zealand-born player who I think made a huge impact when he came on, and that was, of course, Jared Butler. I just think he just adds. I'm not sure how
Presence.
It does add. He adds a presence, and I think he's also. I think he just knows where to be on that pitch and how to direct. And I think,
they looked a lot more organised
Yes.
when he came on.
Absolutely. And I think the subs made a huge difference tonight. And that's what they're there for.
Yes.
So I think they got, I think the coaching setup definitely got that right in the time that they came on.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
it was really touch and go for a long time there whether they would get over the line. But, I think they did make a huge presence.
They did, and Peter Dooley getting his first try for Connacht, which was great to see. He's been here a while and had another big impact. It's great to have that sort of quality coming off the bench. Looking at the likes of him and Sam Elo, we've been waiting to see what sort of impact he's going to make, and looks like he's starting to make it, which again is something that's required for Connacht.
And I just noticed here, and it's according to your stats.
All right.
that it was actually Gareth Butler's 100th appearance.
As in the URC?
In the URC, yes.
Yeah,
URC.
absolutely.
So congratulations to him.
Yeah, we'll celebrate whatever we can. Because we're looking at, there's a couple of players getting pretty close to either a 100 cap or 200 cap coming up pretty soon. I think Finlay Beelam's a couple of games away from a 200 cap, and I think Dave Heffernan's not that far away. So you've got a lot of players who are coming up to big milestones as this season moves on. Very slowly, William. We've another 2-week break before we get another game.
The only thing I would say, we have to recognise the fact that they were without a lot of their internationals, but it doesn't detract from the fact that it was a victory and it was hard earned and it was eked out. But we do have to understand that. But I suppose at the same time you can say that looking at it, Connacht have a few players missing as well, so it kind of, I suppose, evens it out.
Yeah, there's a bit of that. I'd still, and the weather definitely had an impact. I think if I heard rightly while I was mooching around here, Caolin mentioned it was as bad as the night against Munster, and that was pretty horrific.
Yeah, that was. Certainly, I think the amount of rain we were seeing, I'm not sure about the wind. The wind against Munster.
The wind was a bit more.
But, it's job done. I agree with you. I think they'll have to look at this. I really do. I think I said that in the midweek podcast. You've got this gap. They stop. I understand players need breaks. We stopped for 4 weeks. They play a game.
We've never stopped for 4 weeks.
No, we haven't. But you see, they had played 13 in a row because of the World Cup.
The World Cup, of course.
So that's got in the way. And then we had stopped for a week before the 2 European games.
Yes.
But the problem is the URC kind of disappears off the radar. It won't be around next week. Ireland play Wales. Then it comes back for a week, and then it stops again. And it hopefully, Ireland, I think, will beat Wales. So it's going to then all be about England, Scotland.
Yeah.
Can they win a Grand Slam? And that's fine. But then it starts again. And once it gets going again, it's non-stop until June the 20th.
Europe then kicks in as well.
Oh,
you
Europe,
see.
yeah,
You've got
absolutely.
2 weeks of Europe as well.
Yeah,
that
you do.
Comes in the ways, but
Well, it's only 1 week for Connacht unless they beat Pau.
well, I'm being positive here.
Yeah, that's all right.
2 weeks.
That's all right. No, I agree with you. But it does mean they have to get players playing. You have to see who's in your squad.
Yep.
You can't just. Yeah, they seem a bit stretched at scrum half, possibly, but Colin Riley will be back. But he's coming back from a long-term injury, so you can't just throw him in. The one advantage they have is the Scarlets are really poor. But I don't care how you write it.
Yeah.
And I don't think they'll launch it. I think Connacht should be lining up to really
Yep.
muller them in Galway.
Absolutely. And get that points difference going, because that's one thing that's holding them back on
Yeah,
the table. Is
you
their points
need to
difference
do that.
isn't as good as it could be.
You've got the weakest South African side. Well, maybe not. The Sharks probably are the weakest, but you've got the Lions coming.
Yeah.
They don't travel well, particularly. And then you've got, I've said it before, I'll say it again, Easter Saturday, 1 o'clock, away in Treviso against Benetton. That is a massive, massive game.
Yep.
You go there and win 3-0, which Leinster did a couple of years, or that might have been Zebre.
A few years ago, yeah.
Go and win 6-5,
Yep.
win 10-9, it doesn't matter. Pick up 4 points there, and then you're getting into a good position. They've made a start tonight, but they'll have to be a hell of a lot better. They could probably get away with a performance like that against the Scarlets, but you won't get away against the Lions with that performance.
No, you won't. Like, they're still in ninth, even after getting a win tonight. They're still in ninth. Still haven't got into the top eight yet.
But there is room to get there. There is. They've played 10 games now. There's 8 left. They've probably still got to turn around and win minimum 5 of them.
Well, certainly, let's start with the next one. Let's get the win. Let's get the points on the board. They started tonight. Tonight was a massive game. They had to win in a place where they don't win very often.
No.
And that was huge. And I think, as Linley mentioned, the atmosphere that was there, just all the pressure was on Cardiff to play well, and they did. They came out and did.
Yeah, bearing in mind, look, the red card came very early in the game.
Yeah.
They played 66 minutes with 14.
Yeah.
No, it didn't.
Certainly
No, it
but
didn't.
then that happens with teams. It's not always a case that you're down to 14. If because it just depends on how. And again, the night that was in it.
Yeah, it
and I'll
helps.
always
It
say
helps the defending side tonight. They've actually got another defender.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
the ball will get knocked on. The ball will get failure to pick it up. A pass will slide off wet hands.
Exactly.
So that's
what I'd like to see them do in those scenarios. When the opposition of 14 men, give them the ball. Kick the ball down the field and make them run. Because when they did that in the second half, they got their try from a kick down the field with an excellent chase, turned the ball over, and eventually scored a try. And they almost, the one where we talked about where they missed it, that was exactly the same. Why they weren't doing that earlier in the game, I'm not quite sure.
Well, that's part of maybe the learning curve. They need to work that. It seems very simple stuff.
Yeah.
But they've done it. They've got the win. It wasn't pretty. It's not a game you're going to remember for any length of time. But at the end of the season, if those 4 points get them into the top 8, you won't care.
Exactly. It's an away win. And we'll always take away wins, Linley.
Yeah, but I actually think it's probably one of the games you do remember. You remember it for the fact that it was so hard fought, that it wasn't a great game, that Connacht didn't play their best. But what I like about it is they had sufficient mental toughness to actually get across the line, which on another day in Cardiff they wouldn't have. So I think we should actually, I'm delighted, we should celebrate the fact that this is how many wins do we now have over Cardiff?
4 in Cardiff, yeah.
4 in Cardiff in the whole history of the URC or Pro 12 or whatever it was. So I think
you're talking 24 years. We only got 4 wins, so yeah.
So
we'll
I
take
think
it.
exactly. I think we should celebrate it.
I think we should. Okay, I think we'll leave it there, folks. Remember, if you want to catch up, we've got plenty of podcasts that we do during the week. There'll be 1, maybe 2 next week. We'll have a break the week after that. Well, because we won't, because the week after that we'll be getting ready for Scarlets. So we'll have 1 podcast next week, then back to the normal 3 or 4 the following week. If you want to hear those podcasts, folks, for those who are patrons who haven't signed up, you need to sign up to patreon.com/CraggieRugby and hear some of the plenty of audio we get. We talk to coaches, we talk to players, we get the inside track. So if you want to support us and help us keep this quality work going ahead as we support our little team, the smallest team in the league, get on to patreon.com/CraggieRugby and we'll chat to you during the week. That's it, folks.
Loose, cut it loose. Break out or nothing changes. Sad